The door to the trading post swung open just after sundown, and Caleb Winters stepped inside expecting grain sacks and lamp oil, not the sight of a girl pressed into the corner like a cornered animal. She couldn't have been more than 17. Her dress was pale blue, torn at the shoulder seam, dusty along the hem. Her dark hair hung loose and tangled across her face, and her hands, thin, shaking, clutched the edge of a wooden crate as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. Wide, desperate, pleading. "Don't," she whispered. Caleb froze mid-step, his hand still on the door latch. The word hung in the air between them like a prayer with no direction. "Don't what?" he asked quietly. "Don't look at me like that." Her voice cracked, not with anger, with shame. Caleb's gaze shifted past her, toward the back of the room where two men sat at a card table, whiskey bottles between them. One was Amos Freely, the post owner, a wiry man with graying whiskers and a crooked grin. The other was someone Caleb didn't recognize, thick-shouldered, clean-shaven, wearing a coat too fine for a dusty outpost like this. Amos glanced up, his grin widening. "Caleb Winters, didn't expect you till morning." Caleb didn't return the smile. His eyes flicked back to the girl. She had turned her face away now, staring hard at the floorboards like she could disappear into them if she tried hard enough. "What's going on here, Amos?" "Business," Amos said lightly, tipping his bottle toward the stranger. "Mr. Tolliver here's looking to settle down, needs a wife. Got the funds to make it worth my while to arrange introductions." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Introductions." "That's right." Amos leaned back in his chair, entirely too comfortable. "Girl's got no family, no prospects. Been working here 3 months just for bed and board. Tolliver's offering her security, respectability, a roof that don't leak." The stranger Tolliver finally spoke. His voice was smooth, practiced. "I'm a reasonable man, Mr. Winters. I own land outside of Broken Creek. Good land, she'll want for nothing." Caleb looked at the girl again. She still wouldn't meet his eyes. "And what does she want?" Caleb asked. "Silence." Tolliver chuckled, low and dismissive. "She's got no say in it. Contracts already drawn. Wedding set for tomorrow evening at the chapel in town. All legal, all proper." Caleb felt something cold settle in his chest. He'd seen this before. Different names, different places. Always the same story. A girl with nowhere to go. A man with money and no conscience. A middleman willing to broker the deal and call it charity. "She signed that contract herself?" Caleb asked. Amos waved a hand. "Her mark's on it. That's all the law needs." "Her mark?" Caleb's voice was flat. "Because she can't write her own name." "Don't matter how it's signed," Tolliver said, standing now. He was taller than Caleb had thought, broad through the shoulders, solid. "It's binding, and frankly, this ain't your concern." Caleb didn't move. His hand drifted toward his belt, fingers brushing the worn leather just above his holster. Not a threat, not yet, just a reminder. "Maybe it is," he said quietly. The girl's head snapped up. For the first time, she looked directly at him. Her eyes were wet, but no tears had fallen. She blinked hard, like she was trying to decide whether he was real or just another cruel joke. "Please," she whispered, "just don't make it worse." Caleb's chest tightened. He'd heard that tone before, the voice of someone who'd already given up, someone who'd learned that fighting only brought more pain. Tolliver stepped forward, placing himself between Caleb and the girl. "You're a drifter, Winters. I know your type. No ties, no land, no future. You can't offer her anything I can't give her 10 times over." "Maybe," Caleb said, "but I ain't buying her like livestock." Tolliver's jaw clenched. His hand moved toward his coat, not for a gun, but for something inside his jacket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper, old and brittle, and held it up. "This is legal," Tolliver said coldly, "signed before a notary in Broken Creek. Sheriff Kern himself witnessed it. You interfere, you'll answer to the law." Caleb took the paper, unfolded it slowly. The ink was fresh, the handwriting neat and deliberate. At the bottom, a shaky X mark, her mark, sat beside Tolliver's full signature. He looked at the girl again. You want this? She didn't answer. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked at Amos, at Tolliver, at the floor. Finally, she shook her head, barely, just once. It was enough. Caleb refolded the paper and set it on the card table. Then he turned back to Tolliver. She's not going with you. Tolliver's face darkened. You're making a mistake. Wouldn't be my first. Amos stood now, hands raised like he was trying to calm a spooked horse. Now hold on, Caleb. No need for this to turn ugly. Tolliver paid good money. Then give it back. That ain't how this works. Caleb's voice dropped, quiet and cold. Then we'll find a new way for it to work. For a long moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the faint creak of the building settling in the cooling night air and the distant call of a coyote somewhere out in the dark. Tolliver finally smiled, thin, humorless. You're gonna regret this, Winters. Maybe, Caleb said again, but she won't. Tolliver grabbed his coat, shoved the contract into his pocket, and strode toward the door. He paused in the threshold, glancing back at the girl one last time. Tomorrow evening, he said coldly, chapel in Broken Creek. If she don't show, I'll come looking, and I won't be asking permission next time. Then he was gone, his boots heavy on the dirt outside. Amos exhaled sharply, rubbing his face. You just cost me 2 months' profit, Caleb. Send me a bill, Caleb said without looking at him. He turned to the girl. She was still pressed into the corner, trembling now, staring at the doorway like Tolliver might reappear at any second. What's your name? Caleb asked gently. She hesitated, then, barely audible, Marnie. Marnie, he repeated. You got anywhere to go? She shook her head. Caleb thought for a moment. His own place was a half-day's ride west, a small cabin, nothing fancy, but it was his. Quiet, safe. Then you're coming with me, he said. Her eyes widened. Why? It was a fair question. He didn't have a good answer, not one that made sense anyway. Because nobody should be sold like that, he said finally. Not anymore, not ever. Marnie stared at him, searching his face for something, truth, maybe, or a lie she could live with. Finally, she nodded. Caleb turned to Amos. She got anything here? Belongings? Amos shrugged. A bedroll, a spare shawl, that's it. Get 'em. Amos disappeared into the back room, muttering under his breath. Caleb stayed where he was, watching Marnie. She hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, but something in her posture had shifted, just slightly, like a door that had been locked for years had finally cracked open, just an inch. When Amos returned with a small bundle, Caleb took it and nodded toward the door. Come on, he said, we're leaving. Marnie followed him outside, into the cool night air. The stars were thick overhead, scattered across the sky like salt spilled on black cloth. Caleb's horse, a sturdy bay mare, waited at the hitching post, ears flicking toward them. He tied the bedroll to the saddle, then offered Marnie his hand. She hesitated, then took it. He helped her up onto the horse, then swung up behind her. She stiffened at first, but he kept his hands firm on the reins, giving her space. Hold on, he said quietly. And they rode west, into the darkness, leaving the trading post and Tolliver's contract far behind. They rode in silence for the better part of an hour. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of sage and dry earth. Marnie sat stiff in front of him, her hands gripping the saddle horn like it might disappear if she let go. Caleb didn't push her to talk. He knew better. Fear had its own language, and silence was part of it. Eventually, the trail widened into a clearing near a creek bed. Caleb slowed the mare and dismounted, then offered his hand again. Marnie took it, sliding down carefully, her legs unsteady beneath her. We'll rest here a bit, Caleb said. Let the horse drink. He led the mare to the creek, loosened the saddle, and let her nose into the shallow water. Marnie stood a few feet away, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the ground. Caleb pulled a canteen from his saddlebag and held it out to her. You thirsty? She glanced at it, then at him. Slowly, she nodded and took the canteen. She drank carefully, like she wasn't used to having enough. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Don't mention it." She handed it back, then hugged herself again. The silence stretched out between them, fragile and uncertain. Finally, Marnie spoke. "Why did you do that?" Caleb corked the canteen, thinking, because it wasn't right. "Lots of things ain't right," she said. "That don't mean people stop 'em." "No," he admitted, "it don't." "So why you?" Caleb looked at her then, really looked. In the moonlight, he could see her face more clearly now, the sharp line of her jaw, the way her eyes stayed guarded even when she spoke, and something else. A scar. Thin, faint, running just beneath her left ear, down toward her collarbone. His heart stopped. He knew that scar. 8 years ago, maybe 9, a ranch just south of the Arkansas border, a family named Calhoun. Caleb had been working cattle for a man named Dutch Frazier, a hard man with a meaner reputation. Frazier had a grudge against the Calhouns, something about a land dispute, water rights, debts unpaid. One night Frazier and his men rode out. Caleb had been young then, still green, still trying to prove himself. He rode with them. They torched the Calhoun barn, scattered the cattle. And when the family came running out, father, mother, and 2 daughters, Frazier's men drove them off with gunfire and threats. Caleb remembered the youngest daughter. She couldn't have been more than 9 or 10. She'd tripped running from the flames, fell hard on a piece of broken fence. Her sister had pulled her up, blood streaming from the gash under her ear. Caleb had done nothing. He'd sat on his horse, watching, too afraid to speak up, too ashamed to look away. The Calhouns never recovered. The father died that winter, the mother a year later. The girls disappeared into the wind, scattered like dust. And here she was. Marnie Calhoun. Caleb's throat tightened, his hands trembled. He turned away, gripping the saddle to steady himself. "You all right?" Marnie asked, her voice uncertain. He didn't answer right away, couldn't. The weight of it crushed down on him like a stone. "I know you," he said finally, his voice rough. Marnie frowned. "What?" "Your name's Calhoun, Marnie Calhoun." Her face went pale. She stepped back, eyes wide. "How do you?" "I was there," Caleb said. He forced himself to turn around to face her. 9 years ago, your family's ranch, the fire." Marnie's breath hitched, her hands curled into fists. You were one of them." "I rode with Dutch Frazier," Caleb said. The words tasted like ash. "I didn't light the fire, I didn't shoot at your father, but I was there, and I didn't stop it." Marnie stared at him, her face unreadable. Then, slowly, recognition flickered in her eyes. "You," she whispered, "I remember you. You were younger, you just sat there, on your horse, watching." "Yeah," Caleb said, "I did." "My sister dragged me into the woods," Marnie said, her voice shaking. "She wrapped my neck with her shawl, told me not to cry, not to make a sound, and we hid there till morning." Caleb closed his eyes. "I'm sorry." "You're sorry?" Marnie's voice rose, sharp and raw. "You think that fixes it? You think that brings my father back, my mother?" "No," Caleb said quietly, "it don't." "Then why?" she demanded. "Why help me now? Guilt. You think saving me from one monster makes up for riding with another." Caleb opened his eyes, meeting hers. "No, it don't make up for nothing, but I ain't the same man I was back then, and I couldn't walk away, not again." Marnie's jaw trembled, tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. "You don't get to feel better because of this. You don't get to walk away clean." "I know," Caleb said. "I ain't asking for that." "Then what are you asking for?" "Nothing," he said. "I'm just trying to do one thing right, even if it's too late." Marnie's fists slowly unclenched. She looked away toward the creek, her breathing uneven. "My sister died 2 years ago," she said quietly. "Fever. We were in a work camp outside Fort Smith. After she was gone, I had nothing, no money, no family. I ended up at that trading post because Amos said he'd feed me if I worked. Then Tolliver showed up with his contract." Caleb's chest ached. I'm sorry, Marnie, for all of it. She didn't respond, just stood there staring at the water. I won't blame you if you don't trust me, Caleb said, and if you want to go your own way come morning, I'll give you supplies, a horse, whatever you need. Marnie finally looked at him. Her eyes were hard, but something else flickered beneath the anger, something like exhaustion. Where were you planning to take me? She asked. My cabin, about 4 hours west. It's small, but it's safe. And then what? Then you decide, Caleb said. You stay, you go, your choice. Nobody's gonna force you into nothing ever again, not if I can help it. Marnie studied him for a long moment, then she nodded slowly. All right, she said, but I ain't forgiving you, not yet, maybe not ever. That's fair, Caleb said. They rode on through the night, the silence between them heavier now, but no longer empty. They reached Caleb's cabin just before dawn. It sat in a shallow valley, sheltered by cottonwoods and scrub oak, a single-room structure with a stone chimney and a roof that didn't leak much. Caleb helped Marnie down from the horse, then led the mare into the small corral out back. Inside, he lit a lamp and set about starting a fire in the stove. Marnie stood near the door, taking in the space. A narrow cot, a table, 2 chairs, shelves lined with canned goods and ammunition. It ain't much, Caleb said, but it's yours if you want it. I can sleep in the barn. Marnie shook her head. I'll take the barn. You sure? I'm sure. Caleb didn't argue. He handed her a blanket and showed her where the hay was stacked. She disappeared outside without another word. He sat at the table, his head in his hands, and tried not to think about the look in her eyes when she'd recognized him. 3 days passed. Marnie kept to herself mostly, working around the cabin, mending fence posts, hauling water, feeding the horse. She didn't speak much, and Caleb didn't. Push, he worked his own chores, repaired gear, and tried to give her space. On the 4th morning, a rider appeared on the ridge. Caleb saw him from the corral, silhouetted against the rising sun, his horse standing still, watching. Then the rider turned and disappeared over the crest. Caleb's gut tightened. That evening, 2 more came. They didn't approach the cabin, just circled the valley once, slow and deliberate, before riding off. Marnie saw them too. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her face unreadable. Tolliver, she asked. Probably, Caleb said. He's not going to let this go. No, Caleb agreed, he ain't. Then what do we do? Caleb looked at her. We wait, and we don't give him a reason to come in shooting. But the next morning, they didn't have to wait. Sheriff Kern arrived just after noon, flanked by 3 men on horseback. Kern was a solid man in his 50s, with an iron-gray beard and a badge that gleamed too bright in the sun. He dismounted slowly, his eyes fixed on the cabin. Caleb stepped outside, his rifle in hand but pointed at the ground. Sheriff, he said evenly. Winters, Kern replied. His voice was calm, measured. We need to talk. About what? About the girl you took from the trading post 4 days ago. Caleb's jaw tightened. She came willingly. That's not what I heard. Kern pulled a folded paper from his coat, the same contract Caleb had seen at the trading post. Mr. Tolliver filed a complaint, says you interfered with a legal arrangement, says you threatened him. I didn't threaten nobody. That ain't how he tells it. Kern's eyes flicked past Caleb toward the cabin. The girl here. She is. Need to talk to her. She got nothing to say. That ain't your call, Winters. Kern's tone hardened. Bring her out. Caleb didn't move. One of Kern's men, a younger deputy with a nervous hand on his pistol, shifted in his saddle. Sheriff, you want me to? Stay put, Kern said sharply. He looked back at Caleb. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Caleb held his gaze. She didn't want to marry him. She told me so herself. Don't matter what she wanted, Kern said. Contract's legal, she signed it. Her mark was on it, Caleb corrected. Big difference. Kern's expression didn't change. Law don't care about the difference. Only thing that matters is whether it's binding, and it is. The door creaked open behind Caleb. Marnie stepped out, her face pale but her chin lifted. I didn't want to sign it, she said clearly. Amos told me if I didn't, he'd turn me out with nothing. Tolliver said I'd starve if I refused. Kern looked at her, his face unreadable. That true? Every word. Kern was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed. Even if it is, the law's the law. Tolliver's got rights. You sign the contract, that makes you obligated. Obligated, Marnie repeated bitterly, like I'm livestock. That ain't what I said. But it's what you mean. Kern's jaw tightened. Look, girl, I ain't here to debate morals. I'm here to enforce the law. You come back to town, we'll sort this out proper, in front of a judge. And if the judge sides with Tolliver, Caleb asked. Then she goes with him, Kern said flatly. That's how it works. Caleb's grip tightened on his rifle. And if I say no? Kern's hand moved toward his holster. Then we got a problem. The valley went silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then, from the ridge behind them, a voice called out. Sheriff. Kern turned. Another rider was approaching, a lean older man on a grey horse, his hat pulled low. Caleb recognized him immediately, Samuel Worth, a rancher who'd lived in these hills longer than anyone could remember. Worth rode down into the valley, his eyes sharp. Heard you were coming out this way, Kern. Thought I'd follow. This don't concern you, Sam, Kern said. Maybe it does. Worth dismounted, his gaze moving from Kern to Caleb to Marnie. That the Calhoun girl. Marnie's breath caught. You knew my father. I did, Worth said. Good man, honest man. He didn't deserve what happened to him. Kern shifted uncomfortably. Sam. You know who burned the Calhoun ranch, Sheriff? Worth interrupted. Dutch Frazier, and you know who paid him to do it. Kern didn't answer. Benjamin Tolliver's father, Worth said. Same family, same land. They wanted the Calhoun water rights, so they ran 'em off. And now the son's trying to finish what the father started, by buying up the last Calhoun like she's property. Kern's face darkened. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth, Worth said, and you know it. The sheriff looked at Marnie, then at Caleb, then at the contract in his hand. Finally, he folded it and shoved it back into his coat. I'll talk to Tolliver, he said quietly. Tell him the contract's disputed, needs a judge to settle it proper. Until then, Caleb asked. Till then, Kern said, she stays here, under your watch. Don't make me regret this, Winters. He moved, entered his horse and rode off, his men following. Worth tipped his hat to Marnie. You need anything, girl, you send word. Folks around here remember your father, we won't forget. Then he was gone too. Marnie stood in the doorway, trembling. Caleb set the rifle down and exhaled slowly. That bought us time, he said, but Tolliver won't stop. I know, Marnie said quietly. We'll figure something out. She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time there was something other than anger in her eyes. Why are you doing this? She asked again. Caleb didn't have a better answer than before, but he said it anyway. Because I didn't before, and I should have. The days that followed were quieter. Caleb worked the land, mending fence, splitting wood, checking his trap lines. Marnie helped where she could, though she still kept her distance. They ate meals in silence, slept in separate spaces, and spoke only when necessary. But slowly, something shifted. It started small, a shared glance when the coffee boiled over, a brief word of thanks when Caleb fixed the barn door, a moment when Marnie handed him a tool before he even asked for it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the ridge, Caleb sat on the porch steps, carving a piece of wood. Marnie emerged from the barn, a bucket of water in hand, and paused. What are you making? She asked. Caleb looked up, surprised. A cross. For what? Your father, he said quietly, and your mother figured they deserved something, even if it's just wood. Marnie's expression flickered, surprise, grief, something softer beneath. She set the bucket down and sat on the step beside him, not too close. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know." "Then why?" "Because I should have done it years ago." Marnie watched him work, the knife moving slowly, deliberately. "You really think a wooden cross fixes anything?" "No," Caleb said, "but it's something, and something's better than nothing." Marnie was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "My father used to carve, made toys for us when we were little. Animals, mostly. I still remember the horse he made for my sister." "What happened to it?" "Burned," Marnie said. "Everything burned." Caleb stopped carving. "I'm sorry." "You keep saying that." "Because I keep meaning it." Marnie looked at him then, her eyes searching his face. "Do you ever stop feeling guilty?" "No," Caleb admitted. "I don't think I'm supposed to." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." She almost smiled, almost. "So let me ask you something. If you were in Caleb's place, if you'd done nothing when you should have done everything, would you walk away clean, or would you spend the rest of your life trying to make it right? Think about that, pour yourself a drink, take a breath, and stay with me, because what happens next changes everything. And if you're still with me, go ahead and tap that subscribe button. I want to know, what time is it where you are right now? Drop it in the comments. Let's see how far this story's traveled. The next morning, Caleb planted the 2 crosses near the edge of his property where wildflowers grew in the spring. He carved their names carefully: Thomas Calhoun, Mary Calhoun. Marnie stood beside him, silent, her arms wrapped around herself. When he finished, she knelt and placed her hand on her father's cross. She didn't cry, just stayed there, breathing slow and steady. "Thank you," she whispered. Caleb nodded. "I wish I could have done more." "You're doing it now," Marnie said. She stood, brushing dirt from her hands. "That's more than most people would." They walked back to the cabin together, and for the first time since they'd met, Marnie didn't walk ahead or behind. She walked beside him. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Marnie spoke again. "I don't forgive you," she said. Caleb looked at her. "I know. But I don't hate you either, not anymore. That's more than I deserve." Marnie shook her head. "Maybe, but it's what I got." She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "If I stay here, if I really stay, what happens?" "You live," Caleb said simply, "however you want. No contracts, no chains, no one telling you what you're worth." "And Tolliver?" "We'll deal with him, together." Marnie's eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. "I don't know if I can trust you yet." "That's fair. But I want to try." Caleb's throat tightened. "Then we'll try." Marnie nodded slowly, and in that moment, something fragile and uncertain passed between them, not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of something like it. 3 weeks later, Tolliver came. He didn't come alone. Caleb heard the horses before he saw them, 6 riders, moving slow and deliberate through the valley. Tolliver rode at the front, his face hard and cold. Marnie stood in the doorway, her face pale but steady. "Stay inside," Caleb said. "No." "Marnie." "I said no." She stepped out onto the porch, her chin lifted. "This is my fight too." Caleb didn't argue. He stood beside her, his rifle in hand, as Tolliver and his men approached. Tolliver dismounted slowly, his eyes fixed on Marnie. "Miss Calhoun, you've caused me a great deal of trouble." "Good," Marnie said flatly. Tolliver's jaw tightened. "I came to collect what's mine. The contract's still binding. Sheriff Kern can stall all he wants, but the law's on my side." "The law," Caleb said, "ain't always the same as what's right." "Right don't matter," Tolliver said, "only what's legal, and legally she's mine." "No," a voice said from behind them, "she ain't." Caleb turned. Samuel Worth was riding down from the ridge again, but this time he wasn't alone. 4 more riders followed him, then 6, then 10. Ranchers, homesteaders, Men and women Caleb recognized from town, from the hills, from years of living in the same valley. They rode down slowly, forming a loose line between Toliver's men and the cabin. Worth dismounted, his expression grim. "You really think we're gonna let you drag that girl off, Toliver, after what your family did to hers?" Toliver's face darkened. "This is none of your concern." "It is now," Worth said. "We all knew Tom Calhoun. Good man, honest. Your father had him burned out for a piece of land he didn't even need, and now you're trying to finish what he started by calling it a contract." One of the other riders, a weathered woman named Clara Hayes, spoke up. "We ain't gonna stand by and watch it happen again, Benjamin, not this time." Toliver looked around, his confidence faltering. "You're all making a mistake." "Maybe," Worth said, "but it's ours to make." Toliver's hand moved toward his coat, toward the contract, but Worth stepped forward. "You pull that paper out," Worth said quietly, "and we'll burn it, right here, right now, and if you try to enforce it, you'll find yourself riding out of this valley alone, permanently." Toliver stared at him, his face flushed with anger. Then he looked at Marnie. "You think they'll always protect you," he said. "You think he will?" He jabbed a finger toward Caleb. "He's the reason your family's dead." Marnie didn't flinch. "I know who he was, and I know who he is now. That's more than I can say for you." Toliver's jaw worked. For a moment, Caleb thought he might try something reckless, but then he turned, mounted his horse, and spurred it hard. His men followed, kicking up dust as they rode out of the valley. The line of riders stayed where they were until Toliver disappeared over the ridge. Then, one by one, they tipped their hats to Marnie and rode off. Worth lingered. "You need anything, girl, you send word." "I will," Marnie said. "Thank you." Worth nodded to Caleb. "You did good, Winters. Don't let guilt eat you alive. Just keep doing good." Then he was gone too. Weeks turned into months. Marnie stayed. She worked the land beside Caleb, mending what was broken, planting what could grow. They didn't talk much about the past. There was no need. It was always there, hovering just beneath the surface, but it didn't control them anymore. One evening, as autumn began to settle over the valley, Marnie stood by the two crosses, a small bundle of wildflowers in her hand. She knelt, placed them at the base of her father's cross, and stayed there for a long time. Caleb watched from the porch, giving her space. When she finally stood and walked back, her eyes were clear. "I forgive you," she said quietly. Caleb's breath caught. "You don't have to." "I know," Marnie said, "but I want to, not because you earned it, but because I'm tired of carrying it." Caleb nodded, his throat tight. "Thank you." Marnie looked at him, really looked, and for the first time there was no anger, no grief, just something softer. "Thank you," she said, "for not walking away, for shutting the door on what they wanted for me, and opening one I could walk through." Caleb smiled faintly. "You walked through it yourself, I just held it open." Marnie almost smiled back, almost. Years later, travelers passing through the valley would sometimes stop at the small cabin nestled among the cottonwoods. They'd see the two crosses on the hill, the wildflowers growing around them, and the quiet life lived below. And if they asked, the locals would tell them the story, not of a cowboy and a girl, but of a man who learned that redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about making sure the future looked different. The sun dipped low over the valley. Dust rose around their feet as they worked side by side, mending fence, tending life. And somewhere in the hills, the wind carried their names, Caleb and Marnie, like a prayer with no direction. Just a promise kept.